I see Richard in the fucking audience. Like, we've ridden the river, at least virtually, with these guys. And Nick, you've had more contact with Richard Spencer than the rest of us. There's a history of behavior here. And it's not something you can compress backward through the lens of time while reading about it in a couple articles over a few afternoons. It's different. So maybe Richard wants to take the mic. Nick, you see that? Richard's in here.
He just
Who's
left.
Richard? Richard who?
Oh, he left. Richard Spencer. If you say his name,
No, he's
yo,
here.
get him in here. Get him in here.
Oh no,
Okay,
he's
all
back.
right.
He's back.
He's
Get
back.
him in here.
Yeah.
I invited him.
What's up, Richard? I talked to Richard back in February in the space. It was pretty great. I liked what he had to say about his Gottfried's replacement protege, Pedro Gonzalez. That was pretty funny. But anyway, I'll let you guys handle that.
I haven't talked to Richard in years. Long time. Yeah, but we have history. Not really. No, if the SPLC is listening, not really. Only that we've talked. We played Nazi zombies once. And,
Eidolon, did you invite him to speak?
I
did.
I
invited
him.
Let's go.
We both invited him.
And he yelled at me. He yelled at me because, I don't know, there was Twitter drama years ago, and then he yelled at me.
Wicked and hollow.
Yeah, he called me hollow and wicked. That was funny. The old RBS.
We're just waiting for him now. Richard, come on, man. Come on. Take the mic.
I will say he was right about Patrick Casey. He was vindicated on the Patrick question for sure. Yeah, that was definitely one of those moments where it's like, you kill the old king, and then like you have the same problems that the old guy did. You know what I mean? It's like the same situation. There he is. Hey,
there he is.
Hi. Wow. Well, I just kind of randomly popped in, and I get invited to take the podium within seconds.
Yeah, what's going on?
Nothing much. Wow.
So are you working with the SPLC now?
Quite some time. Oh yeah, I'm in charge of that operation.
I know I'm not trying to be a jerk though, but I saw you said something. Michael Hayden tweeted about it. What's going on there?
I don't know what you're talking about, but I mean, what did Michael Hayden say?
You said something like you don't know what's changed or something in response to something about Matt Heimbach working with one of the anti-hate groups or something.
Okay. No, I don't work with any of those types of people, and I wouldn't. Okay. And I mean, there's a booming industry of, as you probably know, there's a booming industry of post-hate, and people couldn't quite grift well enough in the scene, and then they go grift as a de-radicalizer or something. I don't think anyone would believe me if I tried to do that. But no, I find that stuff really stupid and disgusting. So no.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure because I saw that floating around. But yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, you've sort of undergone quite the transformation, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of an evolution. I don't know. When I look back at things, I don't think I've changed that much in my views. I think it's just kind of day-to-day politics. I felt like the scene that I was involved in was leading towards a lot of bad stuff, and I think I've been vindicated on that front.
I have to say, I saw your interview on was it CNN with the girl from Vice, Elle Reeve, and you said something like, "I was slumming it." Like, slumming, and
I was a little bit mad, but to be honest, that's not untrue. I mean, that is how I feel, but she was, I was in I mean, it's not untrue. I just I was rather irritated during that entire thing. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, I know how it goes. I know how they get you on a struggle session for like 3 hours and then they pull. I get it. But,
that is actually exactly what she did. Yes. And I guess I just have a kind of naivete, I guess. I mean, again, I don't that whole interview doesn't ultimately bother me. You know, I mean, it's like if you could have a do-over, you do it differently, of course. But I'm kind of glad actually about that interview because it was a kind of like liberation or something. But it is true. They get you on a struggle session. I have this naivete where I really do want to reason with people. I mean, to be frank, even you, Nick. I mean,
Yeah, no, true. It's
you know,
true.
like I would actually prefer to reason with you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, likewise, I get it. I'm the same way because I mean, you and I, we both been in well, and a lot of these new guys, we were. I mean, you were sort of at the tail end of that era in this, or you were sort of there from the beginning to the end. I got kind of in at the end of the alt right, you know, the post
Yeah.
quote unquote Hailgate in Charlottesville. And a lot of these newer guys don't really remember what that era was like. I just kind of got a taste of it at the very end. But yeah, the journalists they come. I remember after Charlottesville, I did a few interviews, and I had never done those before. And that's exactly what it is. Is they beat you down for hours and hours, and they're rude and they're frustrating, and yeah, every kind of tactic you can imagine, and then they pull 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, well
Yeah,
aware.
definitely. No, it is things have changed. I think probably so many of the people I would even imagine I don't know, maybe a majority of your audience, they they don't even they barely remember 2016.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, like they were in high school or something because I think your audience is very young. So it is actually something totally different. I think for them, I'm probably like a distant memory or some weird Biden supporter, like cringe Spencer, whatever. I don't even know what they think of me. But it's probably that. I don't. It's a lot of time. I mean, for me, I'm middle aged, so for me, 4 or 5 years, that's like nothing. I mean, that's like a week. But for these guys, I mean, like when I was in high school, the difference between being an eighth grader and a senior was like, you know, you're once a boy and then a man. I mean, it felt like a decade or 2 decades. So, you know, for a lot of these new people, I don't think they have. We're so past the 2016 era. I mean, it's just like a distant memory. I mean, even something like Charlottesville is just kind of irrelevant at this point in like public consciousness. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
no, it's funny because it's weird because that was the milieu that I really kind of got started, and it's so weird because you're right. I mean, it's not a long time span, but not just for young people, but also just in terms of all these developments that have happened and how quickly things change because of the internet within politics. The scene is totally night and day from what it once was, and I tell my followers because they take so much for granted, and for what it's worth, I mean, you were in a different. It was a totally different environment when I remember I went over to the place in Alexandria, and they were just like Antifa knew where you lived, and they showed up every night, and they were
oh
like
God, yeah.
taunting you from down below, and you know we were on the balcony, like that was just crazy shit. That like it's just not like that anymore, which is sort of weird. I almost wonder, do you think it's plausible? Sort of random, but I was thinking
Hmm.
this the other day. Do you think it's plausible that like Antifa sort of dissipated because like the government stopped supporting that? Because it seems like they were total, and I don't want to jinx it, you know, speak of the devil, but
Right.
they were so active in 2016 and 17, and then they like evaporated in 2019.
They did. I mean, I think Antifa was involved in the summer of love slash hate in 2020. But yeah, you're right. It is a mystery. I mean, the mystery that I don't understand is why they didn't show up to J6.
Mm,
Because I
hmm.
mean, because I say this like genuinely, like I mean, it's funny because you have like Giuliani or something. He was like, "Whoa, these wipers, they're in fact a communist organization. I've discovered." Oh yeah, but isn't it kind of weird that they didn't counter protest J6? Like, where were they? This was their moment. Fascists were taking over the government, and they were like, well, it's a pandemic, so I can't really go out without a mask. Or I mean, it's just kind of insane, like if there were a flu outbreak in 1933, they would just let Hitler, or 23, they would just let Hitler like walk into government and do nothing. So I'm kind of, joking there, but where were they? I don't know. But
Yeah.
their general their general dissipation, I think, is real. And it is interesting. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think obviously Antifa, I mean, when I was doing stuff in like 2012, and by stuff I mean, hosting a academic conference with people in suit and ties and stuff, Antifa would always be there. And they were just kind of funny. Like they would hold up stupid signs and yell at you, or like spray fake like streamers at you or something like that. Just it was just nothing to be worried about. It was kind of funny. They were like secret fans or something. And then in 2016 and 2017 things really changed. I mean, like the whole punch of me in 2017, I mean, I was totally naive. I was just walking around just being like, oh hey, let's get into some argument, and it's all for laughs. And I was attacked, and it was serious. I could have died. I'm not, I didn't, but it was very dangerous. And then they really they went from like 10 miles per hour to like 100 basically. And pretty remarkable stuff. But yeah, I mean, I have to say, I think Antifa is almost like a myth now or something. It like doesn't. I don't know what to say. I don't think that the government was just throwing the money. I mean, I think that's a little too easy or something. I don't think that's the case, but um, something has happened. Maybe it's just the alt-right is just not around and everything's online. And but I don't know. They don't go. They don't. I don't think they're really protesting Trump rallies either. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird because I remember that was such a, and I didn't even realize it until it kind of dawned on me recently. I was like, wait a second, like, because when I think about those years back then in 16 and 17, and your college tour and Seville, and they were like, because I remember the initial AFPAC. It was so funny. Patrick organized the first AFPAC, and Jared Holt posted the location of it and the way that he wanted to run it, because he was an old alt-right guy. Well, not really old, but he had been around
Yeah.
there. The way that he was thinking and the way that he was operating was, it's got to be invite only, and the location is going to be secret. And so when Antifa or Jared Holt found the location and posted it on Twitter, Patrick literally shut down Michelle's speech and jumped on the podium and was like, all right, everyone get out of here. They doxed the location. And I remember being mortified. Like, why are you handling it this way? And it was like he betrayed me the year after, but he wanted to do the next conferences. He thought like we'd be doing that in perpetuity forever. And I understand that because those were the constraints of that time.
Yeah.
But our goal was to at some point move beyond the kind of like street scrum, like that kind of stuff. And you kind of got to like, you can't just do that incrementally. You got to just say, like, we're going to do it like how normal people do it and sort of speak it and will it. And
Yes.
but it was just, he was shaped by that. So that was like sort of the old crashing into the new. And you saw that. I mean, were you privy to him betraying me a year or two ago?
Oh yeah, well I followed it kind of like from afar, and I wasn't sure who I was rooting for. But I guess I despise him to such a degree that I think I might have actually been on your side in those
Let's
whole.
go.
Yeah, he is. There's just, this is the problem with these movements. It's a problem of anonymity. They're just these. We have weird, like really bad people surrounding it. It's just that's kind of one of my own decisions. I mean, I think I've been kind of kicked out of the movement in many ways, but beyond that, I mean, I just like to have a really small circle, and we have very limited goals that we can actually achieve, and we just focus. And I just think the big tent, you bring in it just felt like a disaster to me looking back, and at the time as well. I would like to ask you, do you feel that, because look, I was kind of a meme. I am my own man, and I think I'm a smart guy. But I never have I've never had like this following of like true fans. And I think the Richard Spencer meme was largely created by the New York Times, to be honest. I was, because I'm not the type that can like mobilize a fan club or something. I piss them off like too much and whatever. But you created a huge and a organic fan base. I mean, I what was it, like 10,000 live viewers or something, but maybe even more than that. So I mean, it was a real thing. And do you think that people in the conservative movement, I was the boogeyman to the conservative movement. They always hated me because maybe this was the Godfried in me. I would always just attack them and just make fun of all conservatives. And that was kind of my thing. That's something you reacted against. You didn't like that. But do you feel that you were used by the conservative movement? Because unlike them, you had a genuine fan base. And so they could kind of push you towards some of their ends, but they could also kind of dump you when, times got rough. Do you feel that way?
No, no, I don't think I was
Okay.
ever, because I was sort of canceled before you had ever even heard of me or met me. I was canceled. Like, I got
Okay.
into
That's true.
college just like a regular guy with no connections and no nothing, because I'm from like a working class background. My parents didn't go to college, and they didn't know anything about. I remember, and it's sort of amusing. You can imagine what like your average boomer, like right leaning type parents would suggest. My parents would say, you got to just write, like you're a young kid and you're conservative. And I'm like, yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. But I go to college and I very, very precocious. And during the election, all these new ideas are coming to the fore, because I was raised in high school on like Breitbart and Fox News and Ben Shapiro and that kind of thing.
Right.
And so I was just discovering, well, you and Jordan Peterson and Jared Taylor and all the usual suspects. And I was too vocal about it because that's before this phenomenon of like alt-right people and dissident right people being clocked and terminated at the youth level like this. It's sort of like a Trump era phenomenon. So it didn't exist yet. I give cautionary warnings to people now because I lived it and I saw it, but I was too vocal about it, and they sent my stuff to Media Matters and to SPLC and Right Wing Watch and all those guys. So I don't think I was ever, because the thing is, I never had like a quote unquote handler or a contact. Like, I was totally isolated, and then I went to Charlottesville, and then I was totally radioactive, and people didn't even want
Yeah.
to be seen with me in private. So I don't feel like I was pushed or pulled directly or indirectly.
Well, I mean in Stop the Steal and that era, and then even AFPAC with, like, I saw some rumors or even reports of Milo getting Marjorie Taylor Greene or whatever to come. There seem to be people. This is my impression. Obviously, it's a loaded question and it's kind of a leading question. This is just my impression, is that whereas I endlessly declare war on conservatives, you present yourself as a conservative. I mean, that's a fair distinction, right?
Um,
Well, okay. Well, just go with it for a moment.
okay.
Um, and what I saw is that there were people like the Stop the Steal people, even the J6 stuff, and I'm not questioning your genuine, interest in this. But they saw, like, a lot of the conservative movement is like it has organizations and money, but it doesn't really have like an activist base. And My feeling looking at that whole thing from the outside in was that they were kind of taking advantage of you. They're like, Nick is a phenomenon, and he has activated all of these people. So let's kind of use him to promote what are ultimately our ends. And then when it's convenient for them, they can be like, oh, well, Nick Fuentes, he's a racist, an anti-Semite. They can just like cut you free. This is just my impression. Um, I felt like they were taking advantage of you.
Yeah, no, I totally know what you're saying, and that is there is truth to that in the sense that, like, for Stop the Steal in particular, that's what there was a big expose in Politico. They got access to all these emails or something or text messages, and that was literally the text conversation. It was Ali and the gay guy, what's his name, Scott Presler or Brandon Straka, one of them, maybe
Oh,
both
God.
of them, and a few other, yeah, a few other of them, and they literally were saying, well, we hate him. Ew, he's an anti-Semite. And Ali was like, yeah, but he could get bodies there. He could get people out there. Um,
Exactly.
and it's true. And even in Atlanta, when we did the Stop the Steal in Atlanta, they, I brought all my people there. I told my people to show up there to join the protest, and they told me you can't speak on the stage. We're not going to protect you. They had security. They said security's like going to go out of their way to not protect me, and I felt like a total asshole. But I didn't mind for two reasons, because it was sort of like it was like a mutually beneficial. What do you call that in nature?
Symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
Symbiotic. That's right. Symbiotic relationship where, yes, I mean, we were being used for the crowd size, but we were sort of using that to sort of slip in under the big tent. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like,
Right.
if we're there with all the Trump guys and whatever, because we are edgier, we are more extreme than them. It's like, hey, I'm a Trump, and it's true. I was like a diehard Stop the Steal Trump guy, but just with, like, obviously a little bit of a different flavor. And even
Yeah.
with AFPAC, Marjorie, the next day, she pretended not to know me. She's like, I have no idea who that group is, but it was just a big crowd. But the thing is, like, that you got to kind of buy your way in somehow. And the
Yeah.
currency that I provide is, I have this unignorable, loud fan base. So that's sort of the base of the influence, which you need some kind of currency, because nobody's going to be like, hey, let's bring in the guy that talks about Jews and race and is an asshole and hates all of us, and his
Right.
fans that hate all of us, and like empower them. And it's, you become an island. I think your issue, if I may,
Yeah.
is you towards the end, you sort of became an island, and I don't think that was totally your fault. But when you were in Michigan and you had Matt Heimbach as your security because you had that falling out with IE, like, that was like a bad move. But you didn't really have any other options, and
Yeah.
it's a constant struggle because of the nature of the view of how the system works and how forceful power is and how it focuses in on somebody with like a laser and blows up them and everyone in their orbit. But that's the constant struggle, is how do you avoid getting totally ostracized and isolated, because that's how they defeat in detail.
What you described is basically accurate. Yeah. Um, I guess I just got to the point as well, like feeling isolated, where it was kind of like, all right, well, you can go fuck off then. Like I don't kind of like, I don't know. I say this genuinely, and this isn't like bitter, but I just like all of this kind of movement stuff. Like I feel like they saw me, they kind of tolerated me and then saw that they could benefit from me. And then the moment in the calculation, it's like, oh, well, he's too hot or something. Then it's like, oh, we hate this, wannabe celebrity and, you know, rakish snob or whatever the whole Spencer criticism are, you know. And so it's just kind of like, well, okay, then you can fuck all the way off because I whether I achieve this or not remains to be seen. I genuinely want to contribute something. Like, I want my ideas to inflect people's thoughts. And, I can do it this way, I can do it that way. Maybe I have to regroup and do it a different way. Maybe things are going to be, 1% the size, but that's okay, because that's what I want to do. So, yeah, that's kind of my impression of the dissident right, or whatever they want to call them. It's just like, all right, guys, good luck and go fuck yourself.
Well, and I don't entirely blame you, because that whole scene was, well, number one, the situation was just unprecedented, and the ecosystem was very different. I, of course, benefited from having witnessed all of that, and very observant, and learned a great deal about the particular dynamic of that ecosystem, where you had that alt-right, alt-light split, and why
Yeah.
that happened, and what contributed to that. And I get it, how frustrating, like, after the election, when they did their deplorable, and they didn't invite Baked Alaska because he said Jews run the media. It's like, that was bullshit. You
Hmm.
were kind of, the alt-right was forced in this unfortunate position where it did sort of just have all the malcontents. When you said slumming, I sort of related to that, because that's sort of what I saw, because I was at Seville, and I was there to see like Faith Goldie and Millennial Matt and like those kinds of guys. And then there's just
I
these
was
like,
too.
yeah, and there's these like, yeah, right, yeah. Well, and then on top of that, there were just these like cretins, and like, just, like, I'm not a white power, like, 1.0 skinhead. Like, that's just not me. That's not you. That's not really what
Yeah.
we're about. And you come at it, you're like, Nietzsche and all that. And I'm, Catholic, whatever. So we're coming
Right.
at it from slightly different places, but neither of us are that. I remember they sat me down. I think you did too. You talked to Christian Piccolini. He set me up with a guy from his organization who was like a former KKK skinhead. And I remember sitting down with him, and he's like, you ever go to a titty bar? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is who you think I'm like? This
Yeah.
is, you know? So I
Yeah.
get it. And it was, so how do you get the formula right? That's the question. And that, it was just sort of,
Yeah, that
it
is the
couldn't
question.
happen.
Yeah, that is the question. I have chosen the Nietzschean path of, living in a boarding house outside of a Swiss ski resort. I mean, not exactly, but you know what I mean. I feel like things have to get smaller, because it's not so much that the guys are bad optics. It's that they don't they can't really offer you anything. It's like they'll come in and be like, "Oh, I'm going to handle security or whatever," and I'm this anonymous, Twitter personality, and then I'll just like that Homer Simpson meme. They just kind of like disappear the second there's some issue, and you have to take, because you use your face, and I absolutely respect that 100%. You take the blame, and it's just like, what are you really offering? Your competency or something? I mean, it's just it's just kind of like an unworkable situation. And certainly post Charlottesville, it just seemed like everything was bad. I mean, if you look back at like the college tour, there was a lot of like the same dynamics at Auburn and A&M, where there was Antifa going crazy, and there was some anger. Okay, but at least my impression, it was like fun and flying high, and just there was something really positive. Once you got to Florida, the anger was just overwhelming, on both sides. And it wasn't fun. It was just this like, let and I think I kind of see this with like, I just saw like images of like the Gavin thing. It just feels like it's an excuse for people, for grugs, to get in a street fight, and they're
Yeah.
using you as the excuse. That's what you are. You're the excuse for them to go punch Antifa or to get punched by Antifa. And it's like, no thanks, bro. I mean, I'm not like, I I mean, like, at least with when what's his name, the comedian Sam Hyde, like, at least that was an actual boxing match with like rules, you know, like I'm not your excuse to go battle Antifa. Like, I don't give a despite the fact that I probably more than anyone should like hate Antifa more than like the plague. I don't give a shit about any of those people. Like, I don't care about Antifa. I don't care about street fights. I don't care. None of this shit matters. And for a lot of these people, that's the only thing that matters. That's what they do it for. That's what it's about. And just, yeah, isolating yourselves from those people is important.
Yeah, well, you should you got to write your book, man. I remember saying years ago, and I think other people did too, you
Yeah.
know, if you're an intellectual, if that's what you see yourself as, you need the intellectual output cuz and people need to sort of understand like you got to play to your strengths cuz I saw what your situation was. You're it's to be the face, to be the front man, it is a particular personality that can literally even tolerate it, let alone be good
Yeah.
at it or anything. And you know, you're charismatic. I think you're a good speaker. But you know, like you said, when people were saying, you know, disassociating or whatever, you're like, well, you can fuck off. And you know, I met you a few times, and believe me, there's like the same kind of like I have a similar attitude in the back of my head sometimes. But if you're not, you know, if you don't love or have that kind of personality where you're willing to be this gregarious sort of the front man or whatever, you know, then it's very difficult to make that work. Because I've seen a lot of times people try and whatever. So it's just a question of who's gonna, you know, you got to become who you are. To
Yeah,
borrow
yeah,
a
exactly.
phrase,
No,
one must
the
become.
book's coming. There's a bit of a memoir quality to it, and I've
Mm,
got this other kind of big thing going. So, and I'm kind of working on other people's stuff. The Brahmin stuff is something that I'm very
ugh.
dedicated to.
You
Oh, I
like
know.
Brahmin?
Oh, I love Brahmin. Yeah, he's been my friend
Ugh.
for a dozen years.
When he says
Yeah,
ameliorate, I hate that.
ameliorate.
Apollonian.
Too
I'm
many
Apollonian. What is this blog? The Apollonian what?
Apollonian transmission. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of
Uh,
that's kind of like the rough draft of what we're working on. It's going to be big. It's kind of groundbreaking work. It's like we're revising and like getting to new places as the book comes together. So I've never really done that before. I mean, I've published lots of books in my time, but it's usually kind of like the author gives me a manuscript and then he gets pissed off when I want to change something or something. You know, it's very set in stone, but or almost set in stone. This is development, and so yeah, it's going to be great. It will convert you at some point.
to an Apollonian. Well,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
the thing is like a lot of when I was, you know, getting started and we were antagonistic, a lot of people called you dumb or something. And I always said, I think you're a thoughtful person. I think you are, you know, what people would say, an intellectual. And I admire that because I don't consider myself like an intellectual. I'm not like, you know, I'm not as well read. I didn't go to school and everything. And so I'm getting to know, it's funny, a lot of the groypers that come to these things now, they're in elite schools and they're real like nerds, real into books and
Hmm.
philosophy. And, you know, and I've got a good enough understanding where I can, you know, I can hold my own in what I do, which is an extemporaneous monologue. But it's important to have that. It's important to have the intellectuals doing the work of intellectuals. And, you know, to the extent that my strong suit is, you know, doing AFPAC or doing cozy or whatever, then I do that. So I think that's good. I mean, I'll read your book. I've been waiting because I remember years ago I was saying, when are you going to write your book? Because I was
Yeah.
going to read it and get a load of all that, your Nietzschean, what you know, that's so
Well,
interesting, your interesting worldview.
There's a Nietzsche book and kind of attack on Plato and that
Mm.
kind of stuff. So that should, but that I'm kind of like terrified of actually releasing it. I genuinely I have confidence, but I genuinely do kind of fear putting it out there, because you put it out there, you get some guys who want to take you down, and you need to get all the foundation laid and, buttressed and stuff like that. But yeah, that will be me. That will be my legacy.
When's it coming out?
Oh God, the Trump thing and memoir will come out before he announces he's running, and so that will be right for the election season. Oh God, I would say at least like 2 to 3 years on Nietzsche, the Cave, and the Lie. Yeah.
Mm.
So, and I mean, again, I spend a lot of time on Mark stuff. So that's kind of what I can only do so many things. And, that's what I'm focused on. But I think the Apollonian stuff, it's going to be a school. I mean, I get the whole idea of like, intellectuals are important too, and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's kind of more than that, in the sense that I think a huge problem with the right, and including the dissident right, is that it is a kind of meme culture, and it doesn't really know what it thinks. And it's just purely reacting to stuff. I mean, like, I get it, of course, but if I see another person react to a Libs of TikTok video, I'm just gonna kind of throw up. It's like, we fucking get it. Like, we get it. It has been done. You do not need to react to another mentally ill kindergarten instructor. Like, we understand your point. And I just think the dissonant right, like that's kind of all it does, and there's kind of nothing below that surface, and it can be totally co-opted by grifters and goofballs. It's like the quartering or whatever. He's gonna do that shit. He's gonna do, oh, look at this person who thinks there's 20 genders. Oh my God. Oh, wow, just wow. And so they can take up that stuff. And I have noticed, I mean, I think so much of the alt-right stuff, I mean, like that, it's okay to be white, or white lives matter. All of these like alt-right memes of 2016 and 2017, and I think a lot of the Groyper stuff as well. And there's a blend there, obviously. I think that the degree to which that like has seeped into the mainstream right is really remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, Candace Owens is kind of like doing your thing, which I never would have predicted. And that is a remarkable thing, but it also kind of shows the way in which, if it's pure reaction, it can easily be co-opted.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's what's kind of been happening. And even the latest stuff, I mean, the replacement migration talking points,
Yes.
the white identity, anti-white type stuff. It's all sort of proliferating. And I mean, to me, I think it's a net positive, because like, if that is if the Matt Walsh and the Tucker Carlson, if the, I don't know if the center, but if that's sort of like the mainstream standard right wing position, to me, that's like much more fertile ground where you could get a Groyper politician who's maybe not like friends with me per se and like taking pictures with me and everything, but you could get somebody who has similar views. The one thing is the
Well, I think
Jewish
that's
thing.
happened. I mean, Mastriano and all these people. I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
see.
Well, yeah, and then the hope is that's it's going to keep going and moving forward. But you're definitely right, and I'm trying to work on that too. I'm trying to level up my game, and we're trying to find our nerds to create our think tank and our papers and everything, because and I think Darren and the quote unquote new right types, Darren Beatty, that is.
Mhm.
And they always talked about when Trump got in that there was no elites. There was, there's Trump, and then there's just following. And the people that kind of filled in the gaps in the middle, and those core tier positions around him, they were all the same people. So now you get like Claremont writing the Trump doctrine, and you get this like multiracial working class populism stuff, because there was nobody writing the which was Trump. He wasn't like an intellectual, but he was edgier than that. But people that are writing the intellectual stuff are less edgy than him. So
Yeah,
we
and the
got to
clear
come up with
monsters are Bush era type stuff.
Yeah.
That's the other kind of weird thing about it, that they adopted Trump. I think there's almost like I've read a few like leftists who have talked about this, but there's a weird kind of winding road that they ended up where they are now, because I don't think you would have predicted that earlier. Anyway, I'm going to say this. This was actually a very civil and fruitful talk, but I'm going to go to sleep.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, it's kind of an interesting catching
Do you
up
think
with you.
Elon's going to let you back on?
Yes,
The burning question.
I
Okay.
do.
All right.
I'm
Okay.
confident.
Interesting.
Yeah, you get to stay on because you're a Fed, right?
Well, exactly. I just show them my, CIA card, and I'm like,
Yeah, you
yeah,
flashed your
goddamn it.
badge at
Yeah.
HQ.
Right. Like Herschel Walker. Yeah. I just like, look, guys, this is
No, kidding, of course. But
yes. All right, guys. I will talk to you guys later. Good talk.
all right, see you. Good
All right.
night.
Bye.
Bye.